Welcome in, everybody, to the latest episode of All Things NBA. I'm Kris Persianen. I'm here alongside the usual suspects, Zach Noble, Albert Nguyen, and we're joined by a very, very, very special guest to me, to Knick fans everywhere, to the NBA landscape at this point, which, wow, hello, Jonathan Macri, folks, the man who has inspired me greatly in my journey in sports media thus far. We're 4 years into that somehow, almost 5. And I could cry talking about how far I've come since texting John while sitting in the front row of health class because I couldn't sit in the back with my friends because I got in trouble for talking, and talking and texting him about, dude, I think I just want to work in sports media. I might just major in journalism, all these things. Going to college where John went to undergrad and law school. I remember when I first got here, we co-wrote an article in which he said I would have Pugsley's pizza cheese stuck between my ass crack throughout my undergrad career, and that is a line that, for better or for worse, will stick with me forever, as I do visit Pugsley's quite often. John, welcome to All Things NBA from A to Z. First of all, how the hell are you?
I'm good. That was quite an intro. I'm good. Happy to be on. I got we're recording this on, pretty late Thursday night, so I got a whole Blazers Suns preseason action I just threw on. Scoot Henderson, man. Scoot Henderson looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Nice size on that kid. I don't think I'd ever realized
he will be bumping. Guys will be bumping off him at the rim.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
He's gonna be good. Yeah, I'm good. You're making me hungry talking about Pugsley's. I'll say that. Good pizza at Pugsley's, and open late, most importantly.
Mm-hmm. The chicken bacon ranch has saved many a night. Listen, we're here to continue our season preview series. Obviously, the team in question, the New York Knickerbockers. John, I want you to start us off by telling me and our lovely co-hosts here, and of course our listeners, what are the expectations for the Knicks this season? If you want to talk both your read on internally, but also people who follow the team closely, who pretty much know what to expect. What lens are we looking at this team through? Is this, hey, these guys are up there and they've got to be up there? Is this, they should be up there, but it's fine if they're not? What lens do you evaluate this season through? What are you loading into your camera right now ahead of 2024?
I feel like that's a popular question right now. And I'm not sure. So it's weird because I feel like if you graded out every team in the NBA by the clarity of the answer to that very question, the Knicks would certainly be in the bottom. I think the Knicks would certainly be in the bottom third of the league in terms of clarity, not expectations, but clarity, because there are, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 teams that if they don't win the championship this year, it would be considered a disappointment in some respect, right? By their internally, or by the team themselves, or by their fan base, or whatnot, or what have you. And then, there are another 8, 10, 12 teams of which there are, I don't want to say no expectations, but if the team made the playoffs, right, it would be considered, okay, it's a nice season, right? And then there's this group of teams in the middle, which again, I keep 8, 10, 12, whatever, about a third of the league, probably a little bit less than a third of the league, where it's okay, if they make the first round of the playoffs and have a hard fought 7-game series to a team that could be considered their equal, maybe their superior, that would be considered okay, maybe. Or do they need to get to the second round? Or is there any world where they don't even push a team that far in the first round of the playoffs, and if it's clearly a better team or whatever? I feel like the Knicks are in that category.
That impossible to predict category, because putting a number on it and then the playoff bracket shakes out a certain way. It's oh, well, now I don't agree with myself. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, like I love the NBA.com's. Like John Schulman just was in charge of it this year. The preseason GM survey. Like there was almost a fifth of the GMs surveyed around the league. I guess so. The exact number would be five. 5 out of 30 GMs thought the Knicks would finish in third in the East. Think about that for a second. 5 out of 30 GMs, and then another
That's crazy.
10, right? Because of 33%. Yeah. So a third of the league thought they would finish in fourth in the East. So that is half of the GMs around the league thought the Knicks would think the Knicks are going to finish with home court advantage, which is wild when you say it out loud. Because I think there are many worlds where the Knicks don't finish with home court advantage in the East, and like it is still considered a successful season. So what I've been saying, and I apologize in advance for this being kind of vague and kind of wishy-washy, but like I think we'll know it if we see it. I think there's a world where the Knicks could have an extraordinarily successful regular season in terms of wins, maybe even if you want to say net rating. And based on how they perform in the playoffs, the season is considered a disappointment. And I also think there is a world where, like, let's say they finish in the 6th seed or even 5th, 6th seed, something like that, and they look a certain type of way in the first round. And maybe you don't even get out of the first round, but they perform in such a way, or certain players perform in such a way, during the regular season and the postseason, where it's like, okay, this is significant, whether it improves their value as trade assets, whether it improves their standing moving forward, any or all of the above. So I don't have a great answer. I know for me, like, here's what I'll say. I'll know what's not a good season, right? Because I've been watching this team for long enough to know, like, I'm going to know if I see something that's not good, and I'll know if I see something that's good. I think we kind of have to wait and see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, from an outsider looking in, John. So Albert here, located in Dallas. I'm not tied with the Knicks as closely as you guys, but if you look at prior to Thibodeau's reign, right, his era, so it was 7 straight seasons of losing seasons for the Knicks. So it makes sense that there's so much optimism right around New York. His first year, he went 41-31 in that shortened season. So I mean, that was a 57 win percentage. Last year was 57.3 win percentage. So they are expecting, on upwards and onwards. They went 47-35 last year. So if the players continue to improve, I guess to craft Kris's question differently, if the players continue to improve, Brunson and Quickley and those guys, and they make that jump, is this a 50-win team? What is this definition of success for this team?
You mentioned Tibbs, so I'll give a Tibbs answer. Could be a 50-win team. Here's where the only pushback I'll give about the possibility that they win 50 is, like, okay, teams win 50 every year. There's, like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 teams that win 50 every year. So it seems extraordinarily attainable, right? And at the same time, you look at the NBA this year, and this is far more of a commentary on the team, on the league at large than the Knicks. Like I just said, I turned on TV and the Blazers are on, right? The Blazers have, Kris, correct me if I'm wrong, the second lowest over under in the league, right? Maybe third.
It's
depends on what book.
There's the Wizards. There's the Wizards at 24.
Wizards are the last. Wizards are the bottom, and then after the Wizards, I'm pretty sure the Blazers are the next team for most sports books. You might be able to get the Pistons at less than less. Okay, so they're bottom 3, right? And I'm looking at this team, and I'm like, okay, you got Scoot Henderson, who would be a number 1 pick in a lot of years. Looks like he's ready to win in the NBA, right? Or at least be a productive NBA player in the league right now. I promise I'm going to stop talking about the Blazers soon. But, like, you got DeAndre Ayton, number 1 overall pick, new scene, a lot of expected of him. Like Jeremy Grant, Shaden Sharp, Anthony Simons, average 20 points. Like, this is supposed to be the second or third worst team in the league. This is where we're at right now in the NBA, where I never in my lifetime, at least, can I remember this amount of parity and this amount of, like,
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's fucking great if you're an NBA fan and you're not rooting for any particular team, when you have to like be biting your nails every friggin' night because you're like, oh my God, is my team can my team just get an easy win? From that perspective, I'm like, man, 50 is a lot.
It is.
Can they do it? Sure, they can do it, but I could probably say the same thing about, I don't know. I feel like I could say the same thing about half the teams in the league. Is there a world where like they could win 50? Sure, there's a world where they could 50. But I think like with a lot of teams, some stuff has to break right, because on the flip side of that is like, how many teams are you like, all right, well, just throw the basketball out there on the floor. They're going to get 50 this year. When you consider like injuries, age issues, like adjustment issues to like new roster stuff. It's like, I don't know how many of those teams out there are there. So yeah, I think they're in the boat with like another 10 or 12 teams in the league where it's like, yeah, 50 is a reasonable possibility. I'm not sure I'd pick that number, but it's possible.
So my read on the team is like expectation wise is if they don't win, let's say 45, 46, finish 6 seed or better, that Tibbs probably out the door unless they have a first round upset. Call me crazy, but that's the read I'm getting. I want to know from your end, like expectations on Tibbs, like yes, a hard fought first round series, going to 6 or 7 games with a great team or a good team. But like if they best case scenario, in my opinion, is if everybody reached their full ceiling, the only player that I think that can make a huge difference and get much better is RJ Barrett. And I used to be much higher on RJ. Last year I went down quite a bit. I think he can still get a little better, but Jalen Brunson, maybe he keeps surprising people. Maybe he levels up a little more, but you can't expect much more than last year out of Jalen Brunson. So with that said, maybe the team just comes more together as a unit, but is Tibbs that type of guy, or is it Jalen Brunson leading this team and connecting everybody and raising their ceiling, being that type of player that just makes everyone around him better? And maybe they get to 52 wins, maybe they get to a second, or luckily just sneak into the conference finals type of thing as the ultimate 10-20% scenario in my mind. So I guess 2-part question. The first would be, how does Tibbs keep his job? And then second off, where do you see this team getting that upside of being better than last year, if you do see any upside?
I'm going to jump in before John and let him filibuster to think for 4 seconds and say that I don't know if I agree with the framing of I would say what has to happen for Tibbs to lose his job. I wouldn't say, how does Tibbs keep his job? I think that's where we are. I think he is keeping his job with where we are until a superstar comes and says,
I don't think it's in jeopardy.
If a superstar comes and says, I'm coming here if you dump him, I still think the Knicks would make the superstar try it out and then fire him midseason if they like. I
get that read.
So
John,
Kris, first of all, I'll say that Kris is the better person to answer any questions about Tibbs than I am, because he's more plugged in than I am at this point in terms of like, I think look, we could talk for a half an hour about this. Politics at the Garden has always been a thing. There's, being a voice that has James Dolan's ear it goes a long way. Now, I don't know how to analyze that aspect of it. Oh God, we're really going off track with like Dolan. Really, he's been out of the basketball ops for a while now. But now that he has the Sphere thing and like it's become like basically like this revolutionary entertainment venue, and like he really has that to latch onto. I really think I maybe this is naive of me. I think he's pretty much out. I think it would take.
I can tell you he has been involved in, or not even him directly, just as a result of that side of things at that address.
Yeah.
The classic white jerseys were removed before even getting to the store because he didn't like them. That was him.
Wow.
Also, there were some big PR shakeups.
Yeah, so stuff like that. Stuff like that.
But that's not. I don't hear any
Otherwise,
mention
it's
of
mailbox money.
I don't hear any mention of a 94-foot hardwood in those changes.
Yeah, and I think it would take something where like enough people in his orbit would have to like be chirping in his ear to be like, hey man, you better look into this. This stuff's going really sideways here. I don't think anything I don't think anything's going on that would bring him to like they would really things would have to really go awry for Dolan to come in here and go to Leon, who he trusts. Clearly, he trusts. He's always trusted him to run the team before he was running the team. For him to come in and be like, "Hey, man, what's going on here?" I think, and again, I would lean more on Kris on this than me. It seemed like at the at the beginning of last season, we were maybe veering in that direction where I know Kris's colleague Ian Begley reported that there were some at least one outside executive kind of circling the waters. If Tibbs get fired, or maybe even if Leon gets fired, maybe interest in the job or whatever. I think we're so far away from that. Like, things are so good right now. And so that's the easiest way I could answer the Tibbs question. I completely agree with the way Kris framed it, which is like something would have to happen. And even if it's a successful season and they're on the verge of making a star trade, I honestly do think they would make the trade first. And they'd be like, let's see how it goes with Tibbs, because even with Leon, even with all the trust that Dolan has in him, front offices get a coach, right? They get a second coach, right? They get their coach, and then they get to fire the coach, and they get another coach. Typically, sometimes front offices get more than that, but you're guaranteed at the very least to get a second opportunity at a coach. So you don't want to blow that shot, and there's no reason to blow that shot with Tibbs. Tibbs is ham and Swiss, man. It's like, for a franchise that's been starving for as long as they have, like, you know what you got there. And I think he came along. I'm a huge fan of his, more so than most. And I think there's a lot to be said for what he brings. Now, as far as the other thing I'll push back on is what you said about like who's getting much better on this roster. I think there's 4 or 5 guys on this roster that could make a significant improvement. And it's funny you mentioned Brunson. Again, this may sound crazy, and he's like, he is the guy that has made me I'm a fan. Obviously, I'm a fan of the team, but like, made me, like I've said it, made me like a kid again in how I root for this team. Like, Jalen Brunson makes me believe in things that I shouldn't believe in, because here is this guy who was like, man, doubted all his life. Obviously, second round pick, the whole thing. Mavs didn't want to give him $55 million, which is going to go down as one of the worst decisions in the history of basketball, especially if things keep going awry in Dallas. Not to rub it in. Rub it in. If Luka, if this season goes poorly and Luka is able
to
be
ours too. Let's be honest.
Whatever. We don't have to go there. But like, I don't know. Why can't the comp I'm going to make is a comp that has been made before, and I don't love the comp because they are not similar player types at all in terms of what they do, what side of the floor they excel on, so on and so forth. But like, why can't Jalen Brunson be Chauncey Billups in terms of
I was waiting
impact?
on it. I was waiting. I knew it.
No, in terms
who says he's not better already?
Well, but so accolades, right? Jalen, Chauncey Billups,
put Jalen Brunson on that team, they win.
Yeah, I'm just talking accolades, right? Billups, I don't have it in front of me. I want to say he made 5. I know we made 5 All NBA teams. I want to say he finished 5th in MVP once. Oh, wow. Maybe 6th another time or something like that. But like, Brunson has yet to, like, Brunson got a 1 MVP.
5 All-Stars. 3 All-NBA.
3 All-NBA for Billups. Sorry. Okay. So I was off by 2. Brunson got a 5th place MVP vote last season out of 100 votes. He has a long way to go before he's consistently showing up like higher in the ranks like Billups did, because the Pistons were one of the best teams in the league. The Knicks were not that last year. But who's to say that Brunson couldn't get to, again, not comparing them as players, even though they play the same position, but who's to say that Brunson can't get to that level? So there's him. I agree with Barrett. I think Barrett will get better. I think Barrett arguably is the safest bet to get better.
Wow.
Although
this for John is development, I think, in regards to not from, right now, I'm not saying this is some new thing. This goes back a couple months to the playoffs, but I'm just to contextualize for anyone who somehow has heard this show and not John's. God bless you, first of all, if you exist, that this is different for John. that this is a different direction of projection. And, I never think John ever said, oh, RJ won't get better. RJ won't this and this. I just think the confidence is there now that this is someone on track to somewhere. And that, for a Knicks team that came from starting him at point guard and Alonzo Trier and Wayne Ellington and, that
good times.
That's the Leon Rose thing right there. I have to add for all of you, but especially John, that Chauncey, when I first found out a couple years ago that Chauncey Billups was drafted to the Celtics and that Celtics head coach Rick Pitino didn't like him, I was like, who head coach who didn't like who? Like, that was the biggest, like, mind blowing. I had no idea any of that had happened. I didn't know Pitino had coached the Celtics. I didn't know Billups was drafted there. I didn't know any of this because I was born in 2002. But that's a fun, whatever slap in the face to me from history. Like, study up.
The real kicker. Well, I don't know. Because he had obviously a cup of coffee in Denver, but the real kicker is probably Minnesota because in Minnesota, I'm pretty sure that's where it was, where he already started to show signs of being the guy he became in Detroit, and they didn't.
Kinda. We called him Chonky in Minnesota, my man.
But they didn't bring him. But they didn't bring him back.
House.
Yeah, and it was Detroit who got to reach.
It was a regret. Anyway. Still a regret.
I think that's the thing. You see, Kyle Lowry and Mike Conley need like 4 to 5 years before becoming guys where you're like, sure. I'm confident that I can play them in my rotation for a lot of minutes. Not even like this is a good starting point guard. Kyle Lowry shot something like 12% from three his first year. It was,
but that's a good transition to the one other guy I want to mention Quentin Grimes. I think Quentin Grimes could get a lot better, and will get a lot better. And then the last guy is Immanuel Quickley. I mean, you talk about how much it takes to learn the point guard position. I'm still not sure. Long term, I could see a world where the Knicks keep Brunson and Quickley, just because I see Quickley as a point guard. That's the way the game is now. He could start for some. I don't know what the roster has to be for Quickley to start, but he could obviously start. He's good enough to start. He'll keep getting better. He puts in the work. He's an insane worker.
Today.
Sure. I mean, but you could name 5 or 6 other teams probably.
At least,
he could start for them. And
I can tell you that when other teams thought that the Knicks weren't so gung-ho on keeping him, the number was in the double digits of teams that called and checked in several times with the New York Knicks on the availability of Immanuel Quickley. A couple of those teams, to be specific, Los Angeles Clippers really wanted him. They didn't, New York had a price that they were not going to meet. They went out and made a reaction move, signing John Wall. That might make the later move, getting Bones Highland, make a little more sense, knowing they had interest in Quickley. Another team that was very interested in Quickley, specifically to pair him with Anthony Edwards, was the Minnesota Timberwolves.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we're really getting off track. If this season goes well in Philadelphia, and then Leon is looking around the summer and it's like, man, I wonder if I have to pull the trigger on something. I wonder if the Minnesota thing wouldn't come up again. But like any team with like a primary that's a 2 or a 3 or I guess a 4 in LA's case. I don't know what Kawhi is at this point. But like, yeah, Quickley makes perfect sense. So, and I think he'll keep getting better. So I think the Knicks have a lot of guys that can get better. I mean, tell me Mitchell Robinson gets better. Like, I believe that,
Yes, I'm just talking a significant leap that gets the team to a higher ceiling.
So, but that's the thing though,
I think it's a cumulative leap, right? It's like the whole team as
that's precisely it. Is like and I think again, this is a theme I kind of been bringing up on my show a lot, which is that I think this year's Knicks are going to be a team that kind of tests the theory of like, okay, well, how far can you get? How much can you improve? If like okay, great. You don't have a top, a prototypical top 10 player, right? But like you have a bunch of guys who are all pretty good and a few guys who are really, really good. And they work really well together and they're well coached and they're prepared and all of the things, right? And they're all getting a little bit I know. I'm not killing you for the way you phrase the question, but at the same time, I would even ask like, who's the guy on this team who you're like, well, they're definitely getting worse, right? or they're definitely not getting better. I think you could, I mean, they have a 9-man rotation. You could argue that every single player in that 9-man rotation could be better next year than they were last year, which is a crazy thought, but I don't think it's a lie. When you consider the ages of all these guys and kind of their makeup and all that stuff. So, I don't even remember what the original question was, but I hope that answered it.
No, that's good. That's fair. Let Albert in here.
Oh, is it me? No, Chris,
Yeah.
is you.
Al, go ahead, man. If you got nothing, I'll just edit this out. For
Okay.
this upcoming season, we're talking about Grimes, we're talking about Quickley, right? It seems as if this Knicks team invites more discussion about what they will be than what they are.
Yeah.
I think the reason for that is because of the advantageous situation that they're in regarding the ratio of, however you want to quantify it, how good they are right now to future capital mortgaged. And that first number is pretty high relative to the rest of the league. That second number is pretty low relative to teams that are in their conference, that they're better than, that they're worse than. Last season, we talked a lot about the Bulls, the draft picks they gave up, the Hawks, the draft picks they gave up, the Timberwolves, the draft picks they gave up, the Cavaliers, the draft picks they gave up, as teams that were examples of buying into a star at the peak of the star price before the market was about to crash. And now we're watching it crash. You just saw what Damian Lillard went for. You just saw what Bradley Beal went for. Right. And I know those are two very specific circumstances, but the market crashed. Okay. And the Knicks are now sitting pretty with everything they could ask for. Good players, good picks. That's why people talk about the future of this team more than what they are right now. Because what they are right now, in my opinion, for the last several seasons has not mattered. And I mean that. I know that sounds,
I
that sounds
agree.
harsh, but it's because of Thibodeau. It's because of the talent. There is a floor there. It doesn't matter where they land, if it's the 3rd, 5th, 4th, or 8th seed, because eventually you're going to take some of these guys and you're going to trade them along with some of those picks, and you're going to bring in a top talent in the league. So, John, the reason I built
Chris, John, I guess my challenge to that, right, is every team or every fan base has that utopian idea of like, okay, we're going to accumulate all these assets. We're going to still somehow stay relevant while we're accumulating said assets, whether it's draft capital. Yeah, whether it's draft capital, players, young players, or great contracts. So they are definitely doing it, right? That's checkbox 1. But then checkbox 2 is a hard one, is actually finding that superstar or that big player, whether it's Giannis, Embiid, whatever the case may be. It's a very finite number, limited number of players that you can actually go for. So let's say you accumulate all these assets and you, timing wise or whatever the case may be, it just doesn't happen. And then you have to end up overpaying.
Well, so here's where I'll push back on that. I think here's the nice thing about the situation they're in terms of who they'll be looking at, right? I think there's a pretty clear line of demarcation between the guys who you give up everything for, right? Now, again, I hate putting it in those terms because there will be fans that'll listen to that and then be like, well, wait, you're going to give everything for Joel Embiid? Joel Embiid's always injured. He can't perform in the playoffs, and he's going to be 30, and he's the whole
you give up the farm for Embiid.
You give up whatever you have to give up. There's no negotiation. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some negotiation, but it's whatever. If that's the guy, right? If he's the guy that's on your doorstep, it's okay, well, you can do worse. The guy just won the MVP, right? You give up whatever you have to give. Now, again, I would lean back on Kris. Is that number 1 in their wish list? Is he number 2? Is he number 3? Whatever he is. The point is he's going to be high, right? He's high on their wish list. He's a very good player. And I think, again, if it's him, if things go crazy in Milwaukee, or if things go crazy in Dallas, or if I guess stuff really goes bad in Phoenix, we know who all the guys are, right? Who everybody in a perfect world would want. But we know who those guys are. And then there are the guys that are clearly under that line. They all came up this summer. It's Karl Anthony Towns and Zach LaVine and Bradley Beal. There was, obviously he went to Phoenix, but guys of that nature. And I'm not saying it'll. I'm not saying it'll be a great situation if like, they're stuck in this kind of middle ground where it's like one of the big guys has not yet presented themselves as a possibility, and they have to kind of continue to wade the waters of like, all right, well, how much do we pay for this B-level player? But I do think that the fact that there is that very clear line, that clear divide. Now, listen, eventually they will run out of time because of second apron issues and the fact that like Quickley's getting extended, and next summer like Quentin Grimes is going to get extended, and like so on and so forth. So the you're gonna have to pay the piper at some point. But like they have Brock Aller, who's the most for anybody who doesn't know, he's their numbers guy, their cap guy, whatever you want to say, and who is arguably the best guy in the entire league in terms of like figuring out how to fit a planet through a thimble. And if they need to walk a tightrope to get to one more season, right, where they avoid the second apron so they can continue to be a little bit more maneuverable, right? He's the guy you want. So I myself have been like, look, guys, there's a timeline here. Expect a big trade next summer because like that's the way this is all headed. But like if they needed to push it to another year, I don't think that's impossible. What I will say is, if there's one thing Leon Rose has shown since he's taken over this team, it is restraint, which is not a word that is typically associated with this franchise. And they could have made a big trade this summer. I have no doubt that they could have made a big trade. Emphasis on could have, if they were willing to give up whatever it would have taken, but they didn't. And I don't think because they didn't feel the need to. And I applaud them for that, So we'll see what happens. Ultimately, it's out of their control. Ultimately, someone good enough is going to have to ask out, and then they're going to have to be the team that, presents the best offer. And then within that, there's complexities of like player agency and all that stuff, and how much do players really have the power to kind of push where they want to go. But again, I would go back to like, they're going to give up whatever they need to give up.
So with that said, I mean, real quick, like, who do you think they could have got? Just Beal and Harden?
I mean, they could trade for James Harden today.
Right.
I don't think they want
He
it.
mentioned Karl Anthony
but like
Towns
you said,
too.
for sure they could have got somebody this summer. So
I mean, like, so
Beal or
okay.
Harden?
Let's talk about Zach LaVine, right? So Zach LaVine, It's been reported ad nauseum, right? The Bulls are listening, right? Like if you call them, they'll pick up the phone. I guarantee you, I shouldn't say guarantee.
That's fair.
I would assume. I would be very clear. I would assume that the Knicks could have put together a package good enough where the Bulls would have hung up the phone and be like, well, shit, we can't say no to this. And like send Zach LaVine to the Knicks. And then Leon Rose could have touted like, here we go. We got our big three: Jalen Brunson, Zach LaVine, Julius Randle. What would it have taken to get Zach LaVine? I don't know. More than should have, right? But they didn't do that. That's like just one example. Towns, I would have like
I don't think Towns could be had this summer. I don't think.
Yeah, the entire league knows Karl, and barring something really good happening in Minnesota, like next summer.
Yeah,
sure. They're gonna have to
no chance this summer. They want to see Gobert and Towns together.
I think they have to.
I would let you.
They have to see it.
Take them gladly.
They have to see it.
Zach.
Let me squeeze in here and say that with where the team is right now, we're doing the star chasing talk, right? Of course, because like I was saying, that's the direction we're pointed in. But where I was leading to earlier was a question of looking at these guys like Quickley and Grimes, looking around the roster at Barrett and at Randall. If there is a number one superstar talent coming in, you want to optimize them with complementary players.
Ideally.
Let's try and play a little game here where we sort. Let's do some sorting. Guys you can see having a great chance of sticking, I would put Grimes on that list. Guys you can see being moved off of sooner than later, unless there's major improvement, which I think is very reasonable to project, and I project improvement myself. I think Barrett is probably, on that second list. Where are you at with Grimes, Quickley, Barrett, Robinson, all these guys, even Randall? I think Brunson has locked himself in as
Brunson's not.
Whether it's as X, Y, or Z, he's part of the formula.
Yeah.
I think Randall's the only guy that really doesn't fit with just about anyone. I mean, outside of depending on what version of RJ shooting in his contract you're getting, but I don't think his contract, I'd go look, it's 20-ish, 23.
He's average of 26 and a half a year, but it's ascending, which is
I'd
notable.
prefer it down to 18, 20-ish, but
I mean, look,
unless he's shooting 40 like he was 2 years ago.
Look, if Barrett, choose my words carefully. If Barrett plays up to the capabilities, no one's going to mind the contract. Contract's fine. Randall is, to me, and has been for years, one of the most interesting players in the league because he's a big who you can't really play as a small ball five, right? And so we're in a league right now where John Collins, and to a lesser extent Obi Toppin get traded for, almost literally nothing. These are good NBA players who have very specific fits, and they are fours, right? Who are offense first fours and the whole thing. And like Julius Randle is a version of that. The difference with Julius Randle is like he's never going to be one of the elite shot creators in the league. But man, that dude, he's a pain in the ass to deal with. I can't imagine any coach is like, oh great, we get to play Julius Randle tonight. Now in the last 5 minutes of a close game, it's a different story. But like, he's such a unique guy, and I think my personal number one question for the last couple of years is like, what is Julius Randle as like the number 3 guy on a roster? I don't have the answer to that question. And if anybody says they have the answer to that question, I think they're lying, because I think you just I just don't know.
We've seen it in New Orleans with a very different, very
5 years ago,
version of Julius.
Yeah, it's like
the skill set now is different.
Yeah, is this a guy who's going to like lean into all the things you need to like do to be Chris Bosh on the Heat? Like something about that doesn't compute. And at the same time, to be like, all right, well, he can't be a number 3, so I guess we got to throw him out. Like, that doesn't make sense either. So I don't know what to do with that. So I'm going to put Randall aside for a second, because I just don't know. I frankly just don't know how to answer that question. In terms of everybody else, I agree with kind of the way Kris phrased this. I think Quentin Grimes is the most malleable player on the roster. He's the guy you could drop into any team in the league and he'd play minutes. And I feel like I'm doing a disservice to Quickley by putting him after Grimes. Just the difference is, I don't know. I like where I think Grimes is going as an on-ball defender. Like, I think he's a guy that like teams for the next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years are going to be able to put on the opposing team's point guard and feel good about that, right? And that has such value. To say nothing of his movement shooting and all that. Quickley is different because his value is more on the ball, but he's also a stellar defensive player. But it's just like he's still his size, and I understand he has a long wingspan and he like overcomes the fact that he's kind of short. And like I'm really curious to see where Quickley is defensively, specifically more of an on-ball role, because I think he's one of the 5 best off-ball defensive guards in the league today. Who the hell knows where he's gonna be in 2-3 years. So I feel like I'm selling Quickley short here, but I think Quickley's a guy that could stick around. It's just, again, kind of a weird issue with Brunson and that whole thing. And then Barrett, it's like the shooting, right? Is Barrett going to be ever going to be a 38% 3-point shooter? Is he going to be a guy who eventually teams are going to be like, well, we got to guard him? I don't know. I wish I had the answer to that question. I'm sure the Knicks wish they had the answer to that question too.
Yeah, obviously it's a lot of unknowns with this team. Like I said, you're looking towards the unknown. You're looking towards, there's suspense, right? There's tension. Something's coming. Everybody in the league knows something's coming. The thing is, I think an underrated aspect about this team is how good they are right now, where they're at right now. Mitchell Robinson, to me, is a top 8 center in the NBA. If I'm going to have to play it safe, if I have to write in ink a number, I'll give you top 10, right? That's genuinely good when you're looking at all-star Julius Randle, all NBA Jalen Brunson. I know those two are switched in real life, but realistically, that's probably where those designations land. An improved Barrett, an improved Quickley, a confident Quickley, again, a perfect 4th or 5th starter in Grimes. The addition of DiVincenzo, the re-signing of Josh Hart, you're looking at a team that does have just a lot of good players. There are 2 teams in the NBA, John, that had 6 players land on the most recent top 100 list to drop, and it was the Warriors and Knicks. And I think that says a great deal. But I want to direct you to, I won't say our friends,
who was the 6th Warrior? Looney, I'm assuming, right? Looney should be on it. If he's not on it, he should.
He's
anyway,
fun.
But I digress.
I won't say our friends in Vegas. I will say our foes, our sworn enemies in Vegas. 44.5. 44.5. That is your magic number right now. I'm just gonna give it to you straight. Give me over or under.
Andrew and I just did our East over-unders last week for the KFS Patreon. I think we had the line he found for the Knicks was, I believe it was 45.5.
So FanDuel is 45.5, DraftKings is 44, and Caesars is 46.
Oh, 46, not 46.5?
46.5, yeah.
Oh, well. I'd go over on all of them. I'm not sure I'd go over on 47.5. Because again, I don't want to repeat what I said earlier, but it's just the league is in a great place right now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I think the team is going to find itself in a lot of close games. I want to say, hold on, give me half a second, because I think they played in the 5th most clutch games or games last season where there was a clutch situation. Sorry, they were tied for 6th. So 45 out of their 82 games last season, they were in a clutch situation, which is a score within 5 points within the last 5 minutes of the game. They were 24 and 21 in those situations with a +3 net rating, which, oh wait, no, sorry, I'm looking at the Cavs. They were worse than that. Hold on, I'm spouting lies here. They were 23 and 22 in those situations. They were barely above 500, but sorry, they had a negative 10.7 net rating. Now, how they could be a game above 500? That means to me, when they were bad in the clutch, they were god awful, and when they were good, they were just barely good enough to win the game, right? Because negative 10.7 in clutch situations is not good. It was one of the worst numbers in the league, but they won more clutch games than they lost. So the reason I bring that up is I think once again, because this team, despite the fact that they had the 3rd best offense in the league, does not have the sort of their offense is a hammer. It is not a jetpack, if that makes any sense. So like,
you want to look at football, it's a run game.
Yes, they might be Jim Brown, but it's still 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Ground and pound. That's Tibbs.
Yeah, but again, it worked. But
I think the league likes it. Look at the teams targeting offensive rebounds and creating second possessions.
You were all over this recently. I saw that. Which yes, completely. It's like coaches are always looking for how can I zag. My point is, I think they will be in a lot of close games again, and how many of those games do they win? Like you could win them, you could lose them. Like if you're in a close game, it could go both ways. So is there a world where they go under? One of those numbers that you mentioned. Sure, there's a world where they do, but I think I feel pretty good about the overs. I would take the over. I would try to find that because whatever the line where whoever's offering
Caesars, if you like the under, you bet Caesars under 46.5. If you like over, you go to DraftKings and bet over 44.5.
Go to DraftKings. I'll be okay. I'll go very optimistic. I would be really surprised if this team did win at least 45 games.
Yeah,
45 and 37.
Yeah,
that seems like. That feels like about the minimum, right? And barring injury, I mean,
that's actually a step back, right, from last season because you guys won 47 last year,
and they played at a 53 win pace after acquiring Hart.
So 53. So it was 50. I get all these numbers mixed up. It was 53 win pace after acquiring Hart, but also
from December 4th.
From December 4th on, it was a 53 win pace, and then if you take out the last I forget how many games they didn't care about at the end of the season. I think it was 2 games. If you take those out, it was a 57 win pace after Hart. Now, granted, it's small sample size, right? It's 20 something games, but added DiVincenzo, I think he'll help. So yeah, we'll see. I feel good about the team, but they're going to be a good team. We'll see what that means, what that looks like, but I think they're going to be good.
Yeah, barring injuries, I feel like the league is expecting the same, right? They have 25 or 26 national TV games this season. They're on Christmas.
They have a lot, yeah.
Yeah, they're on Christmas playing the Bucks, first game on Christmas Day. I mean, a lot of people are expecting definitely a good team. Again, we don't need to get into definition of success or anything like that, but do the players themselves have the expectations that this team as currently constructed
sure
are going to win and advance in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I think Tibbs is a guy who's like, he talks a good game. I think he knows this team needs a guy. But like, look, he's gonna go into every game thinking he can win it.
He's just happy to have a job. I just fucking.
Hey, listen,
I
don't think he's getting another job after he leaves this, whenever that is.
Well, just because of age, I think you can look at him like a Buck Showalter, who, because of age, won't get a next gig that lasts too long, but is a blank guy, basketball guy or baseball guy, whatever you want to say. They are a pure lover of the sport that they coach or manage, and they do the best they can to give their team the best chance to win every game. And that's I think Tibbs is better at that than Buck was with the Mets. But nonetheless, it's that old brand of savant. Yeah, Zach just doesn't like Tibbs because Minnesota. So that's I
think he's doing great. No,
Tibbs liked basketball too much for Karl Anthony Towns. Which was a real quote.
Right.
I'm not trying to be mean. Karl said that. So that's
no, I wish he would have chose Jimmy over Cat. I really do. So
I think Tibbs would have. I think your front office is the people in question there. Right. John, one last question for you before we let you go and wrap up all of this noise around OG Anunoby, who
I didn't think
not,
he was gonna fish up there.
Not a superstar player, who is not considered a star player, but to me, it's a step for the Knicks ahead of that leap to a superstar. I'm just still thinking complementary players. If you're a front office and you think to yourself, I'm going to get a superstar and I'm going to put Quentin Grimes and OG Anunoby and Jalen Brunson next to that superstar and Mitchell Robinson even, I think you're really happy. So that to me strikes me as if the Quickley extension happens and in a year they want to move him, whatever it is, how do you feel about OG Anunoby? Is he someone you would swap Barrett out for, or is he someone that your condition would be, all right, I'll swap Barrett out and bring Anunoby in, but there better be a star along with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is going to be very hard-hitting analysis. I mean, how many guys are there in the league that are OG's size? So OG size, and you feel pretty good about they could defend 1 through 4 at something close to an all-NBA level, all defense level, excuse me.
6'7", 230.
The guy's a fucking brick shithouse. And he's a 38% career, 38% career 3-point shooter, right? And like, yeah, there's the creation stuff, which is like, is that a plus or a minus, right? Because he if you listen to what people say out of Toronto or what has been said at times, maybe it's not out of Toronto, but like whatever, the thoughts that he wants more on-ball opportunities, like, is that an impediment? Is that something you don't want to deal with? Is that a positive? I mean, he's 26 years old, so who knows, maybe. But like, again, talking about guys who could be on any roster in the league. I mean, Devin Vassell just got 30 a year, right? 29, 30. Obviously, he's younger than OG Anunoby. And
135 guaranteed,
135. Okay.
146 total.
So thank you. So 27 a year guaranteed. And he's a little bit more theoretical, I think. I love Devin Vassell. I think Devin Vassell's awesome. But like,
he's theoretical, but he's good right now too.
Oh, he's awesome. The guy averaged like 19 points a game last year, and he was efficient in the whole thing. But like, in terms of defense, like, he hasn't defended yet like OG is. That's more of a projection, right? OG's been a better again, 3-point shooter over the course of his career. And so like, I don't know. I'm assuming that, like, my point is like OG's going to get 35 or 40 a year. And I won't be surprised. Maybe some people will be surprised. Like, what, you're paying this guy to who's never made an all-star team? But that's just like the value of that particular player type. So would I give up RJ Barrett for him? Oh man.
Isn't this fun?
I mean, I would. I would. There's a few too many things to me that need to go right for RJ where I don't, and even if they go right, like I'm wondering, is he ever going to be like OG's? It's like defensively. RJ's never going to defend like OG.
OG's a star
I
in
thought
his
he
role.
did not 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
I thought he was that elite. But
This
like,
is a
he
Knicks
lost
team.
it last year.
This
I
is a
don't
Knicks
know.
team founded on guys who are stars in their roles. And I think Anunoby fits that bill. It's why he's someone I'd watch out for. I'm also who first reported last year that the Knicks were the mystery team that offered 3 first-round picks for him because they were genuinely interested. It was 1 unprotected and 2 protected. It wasn't a whole load of assets, but that's something. I would assume the price remains around there because no one met that price, but now Anunoby is still a hot commodity apparently. So
Well,
price is probably around there still.
and like I think one of the things, just as an NBA fan, and again, the Knicks tie in here obviously, but like I'm fascinated by is, so like OG's obviously an expiring he's obviously going to opt out of his player option for next season to become a free agent this summer. Like, so there will be teams that can offer him a max contract. I don't know if he's going to want to go to those teams, but like, what does that
bad max?
Yeah, well, what does that look like this summer? Like, what are those sign and trade negotiations? What do they look like between Masai and OG's camp and Team X? If he gets to that point, and who knows, he may be traded tomorrow. He might be traded in February. Like, we have a long way to go. But like, if it ever got to that point, I'm just fascinated by, because I don't think I who the hell knows what Masai is doing at this point with the talent that has just walked out the door. That's neither here nor there. But I would imagine the Knicks will continue to monitor the situation in Toronto. Is that a good way to put it?
That is actually the way to put it. That's Ian's way of always.
Yeah. Because they'd be fucking idiots not to. Sorry, I don't know if I should curse on this podcast.
You can.
Yeah, but no, because he's just like, man, that dude's good and he's still young and he might be getting better. So I like him. Again, it's like, you don't let me say the last thing I was like, you don't have to be in love with OG Anunoby to be like, oh, I think the Knicks should really explore giving up real stuff for him.
Every team in the league should explore that. He's that guy.
Yeah,
He just fits every team perfectly. Very few players can do that.
Yeah. And there's real value in having that guy on your team. So we'll see what they do.
Well, my man, I want to ask you one last question, and that is, what is your favorite Knicks team of all time?
Oh, the 99 team. The team that went to the finals in 99. Yeah, Sprewell. I mean, Sprewell is like, I have a big poster of Sprewell. I'm looking at it right now.
I was gonna say that's your favorite, Nick.
I mean,
He's your favorite
in your heartiest of hearts.
in my heart, like
up.
Ewing is like, look, if you're a Knicks fan who remembers the 90s, you kind of have to say Ewing's your favorite Knick of all time. But Sprewell he was a different cat, man. The funny thing about that, and none of you guys were alive for it, but like the team in the regular season, that was one of the most excruciating regular seasons in the history of the team, because they were coming off a good season. They had made the Eastern Conference semifinals the prior year, and they had like all these years where they were solid, but they were 27-23, and it was an ugly 27-23. I mean, like if you're bored one day, go back and look at some of the box scores, and not just the Knicks, the entire league. The entire league, they were just thrown into a season in which they were not ready to play, and the whole thing. But like, my goodness gracious, some of the games that were like 67-58 or whatever, like that was not an abnormal thing back then. And they were not good. And then they just, something clicked, in the playoffs. Actually, it clicked towards the end of the regular season, and Van Gundy has talked about that. But yeah, that team is always going to hold a special place in my heart.
Love it. I
Loved
think
your pod with Van Gundy. That was an
Yep.
epic one.
I loved it too, man. Talking to that guy was such a trip. Yeah, he's like a saint to me.
there's something about getting to dive into a ball pit and just be a kid.
That would
and-
be me interviewing Flip Saunders.
I
Rest
love
in
it.
peace, Flip.
May he rest. I was about to say,
R.I.P..
may he rest in peace.
But yeah, speaking of historians, that's why we had John on. We want to thank you as a trio here for taking the time, but also from our listeners for sharing your insights with them, as I'm sure they'll enjoy. Thank you so much, man. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's late, so vamoose, scram, you name it, but thank you.
I have to
Thank
finish
you,
writing a new. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me on. I have to go finish writing a newsletter right now. But
I was gonna say not before you plug whatever it is you're gonna plug before you get out of here.
I don't need to plug anything. Just
Plug
Knicks Film School. That's the plug.
There it is. All right, John. Thanks for joining us. We will catch up with you about these Knicks at some point. We have to. This is going to be a team that is talked about a lot, and we don't know when that's going to be. But when that time comes, that time is going to come. This front office is going to get very aggressive. Thanks for joining us. And if you're at home, like, subscribe, 5-star rating, you name it. Continue to support the show. Thanks for tuning in.